Hello, everyone. Welcome to Miami Group's virtual July inning. We're going to give it a couple minutes for people to log on, so please bear with us here. Our speaker tonight is Ellis Jacobs. Ellis was born and raised in Dayton, Ohio. He attended Fairview High School and the University of Dayton Law School. He's been a public interest attorney in the Dayton area for 35 years. During that time, he's been involved in a wide range of advocacy. He litigated a series of precedent-setting cases to provide access to computers and the internet for low-income communities. The result was the establishment of neighborhood computer centers throughout Ohio. He had a pretty long set of additional things on his resume, but I think that gives you an idea of where he's coming from. So without further ado, I'll stop sharing and turn the meeting over to Ellis.
Hey everybody, how are you? So nice to see you. Yeah, I'm really pleased to be speaking to the Sierra Club. I've been a longtime member, and I remember years ago actually being involved in a bunch of the earliest demand-side management cases, which had to do with electric energy efficiency. And I believe Ned Ford was from the Sierra Club at that point, was real involved in those cases as well. So this is the organization's near and dear to my heart. And I think we're all on the same page when it comes to the importance of trying to see if we can straighten out the political system in Ohio so some progressive things can start happening in the environment and a whole bunch of other arenas. And I think because you're paying attention, you probably know that one of the biggest impediments we have is the way the districts are drawn here in Ohio. They kind of predetermine the outcome. But this year, we have a rare opportunity, an opportunity we have not had for a very long time because the rules have changed, to try to get fairer districts. And so I got some slides here. And honestly, I don't love working with these slides, but I'm going to do it. And plenty of time for Q&A at the end. And let's see what we got here. Sorry about this. It takes me a second to do what other people can do very quickly in this arena. Where's the whole slideshow thing? Huh.
Upper left-hand corner. There you go.
Yeah, for some reason it seems to be now under up there left-hand corner. Well, there we go. Okay, very good. All right, so I've been working with this group called Fair Districts, and that's a group in Ohio that brings together, it's a big coalition of folks. It's led by the League of Women Voters and Common Cause Ohio, but it includes the ACLU, a whole bunch of other folks, good government, and clean living people. So it's a terrific group, and it is honestly it's the locus for the citizen efforts to try to influence districting. So we will. I hope at the end of this you'll be so excited about this you'll decide you want to get involved with the group. So let's talk a little bit about. I'm jumping right into this thing. What is redistricting? Really, redistricting has two parts, two critical parts. This little graphic here addresses the second part. The first part is reapportionment. And reapportionment is the simple act of figuring out how many people you got in the country every 10 years and how many people each state has every 10 years. Because we have 435 congressional seats in Congress. And we're just going to take the number of people you got in the country divided by 435. That tells us how many people are going to be in each congressional district. And so the reapportionment part is where you announce this is how many congressional districts you're going to have in your state, because we've done the math, the simple math. And those numbers are out. And we know that the US population went up by 16% in the last 10 years, between 2010 and in 2020, went up by 16%. But Ohio's population only went up by 3%. So we are relatively a less important part of the country. And so we're going from 16 congressional seats to 15 congressional And that's what's going to happen this time around. We only got 15 seats to apportion. But even if we weren't losing seats, we would still need to do the second part of the redistricting thing, which is we're going to call redistricting. Okay. And that's where you redraw the lines within your state. And so the first box here represents, say, the way it was 10 years ago. You divide it up. You want to have equal sized districts. I mean, that's what the Constitution requires, right? That's one person, one vote, right? You can't have one congressperson representing twice as many people as the next Congress people. That would not be fair, even though that's certainly the Senate ends up working out. But for Congress, it's not fair. And so after you do redistricting, you're 5-5-5 in this particular example. But over a 10-year period, people move in, people move out, population grows. And now those district lines, which are staying the same for box 1 to box 2, the populations are vastly different. And so you engage in the redistricting process. You can't make people move, so you got to just redraw the lines. All right, so that's the second part of the redistricting process. In Ohio, we got two dynamics going. This dynamic, that the population distribution has changed, and the other dynamic is we're going from 16 to 15. So we got two reasons why we got to do redistricting. And there's a lot of opportunities for mischief in drawing district lines. Oh my gosh. And this is a graphic that I like. I think a lot of people find it to be a really good explanation for how this works. So you can see we've got 50 animals. We got 20 cats and 30 dogs in the very first thing. And so let's figure out the different ways we could come up with 5 districts. Okay, so the first box you see over, perfect representation. You got 3 dog districts and 2 cat districts. That's the representation in the overall population. But you can do a bunch of crazy stuff with this. So the next one over is this idea of cracking it, where the dogs, because they're in charge, they divide the cats up in a way. So the cats get nothing. I mean, it's the same number of dogs and cats, but look at that. You got 5 dog districts and no cat districts. And then in the final situation over here, let's say the cats get in charge and they engage in packing, and they're able to pack themselves into certain districts or pack dogs into other districts where they won't cause the cats any problems. And they can end up with 3 cat districts and 2 dog districts. And these are, 3 vastly different maps with the same exact population going in. So that just shows you the power of this particular tool of drawing the maps. And so last time around, and that was back in 2010, 2011, we drew district maps, and this is what they look like. I'm not going to get into any great detail on them right now, just so you can sort of see. We have 33 senators on the left, 99 representatives on the right. Those are the state districts. And then these are the federal districts. Now, the last time, 2010, 2011, it was done in a completely partisan manner. The Ohio Constitution allowed that. Whatever party dominated the statewide offices got to decide. Whatever party had a majority in the state house got to decide. There was a redistricting commission. I think it's called the reapportionment commission back then of 5. It was all ours. The state house was dominated by ours. And so they basically got to run the show. And in fact, there were no substantive criteria that they had to meet. In other words, there was no way to judge whether what they did was fair or not. They didn't have to do it in a bipartisan way. And so they didn't. They had meetings in a hotel room, which they called the bunker. They took phone calls from Congress people about wanting to put this or that contributor in their district, stuff like that. And we ended up with the maps that I just briefly showed you. And we ended up with absolutely predictable results. The goal back then by the dominating party, and the presentation I'm making is, and this group, Fair Districts, is completely nonpartisan. So if it sounds like I'm beating up on the R's, it's only because they were the ones in charge and they and they did it in the way you would imagine to benefit themselves. So this is what you can see in the congressional elections. It was 55-45 over the 2012-2020 period, okay? 8-year period. You can see 55-45, but the results in congressional seats, 75-25. That's the power of drawing the lines. And essentially the same thing in the state house. It's still 55-45, but 44% R's and 36% D's. This is the way it was designed to work, and this is the way it worked. So let me just show you some of the things that went into getting those predictable results. This is what they call the snake on the lake. We're looking at a couple of congressional districts. I don't want to get into it in any great depth, but you can see this is a district that runs from, it's District 9. It runs from the outskirts of Cleveland all the way over to Toledo. There are places where it barely touches itself. It spans urban areas and some very rural areas, and you end up with a district where Democrats have been packed into that district. So that district's going to be a Democratic district. But what it means is that there are fewer Democrats in that area to go into other districts and to run the risk of those districts being competitive districts. They won't be competitive districts because the Democrats are packed into this one here. Here's another example. This one is down in Hamilton County, a little closer to us, District 1. This is an example of cracking. You see District 1 is I guess it's kind of a nice bluish green color. I mean, look at that those crazy lines. You get Warren up there, you get some of Hamilton, a little bit of Cincinnati, but not all of Cincinnati. Wow. On the left side, you see a picture. That's the Xavier Arena. The Xavier Arena is in District 1, but its parking lot is in District 2. Right below it, you see that one little cutout. That's one particular person's house that jumps from one district to another district for a particular reason, and I wish I understood the reason. I don't. But you can see the kind of mischief you can do. Just one more example, District 15. This is somebody drew this up taking the 2008 presidential vote, which you can see at the bottom there. And they showed you the map that yielded the actual results. They call it the old 15th, where Obama won. And now they've for the more recent redistricting, the one that took place in 2010, they redrew 15, and you can see 15 now is over there in the gray. It's kind of this whole different thing, and it would have yielded completely different results. You can sort of see it would have yielded an Obama loss, a significant Obama loss. So you can really do marvelous things and horrible things, if you will, using the whole redistricting apparatus of drawing these lines. Okay, so those are the bad old days. And where are we now? Well, nothing's changed yet, although rules have changed, but we haven't used these new rules yet. And so you may have some very specific questions later on about how this is going to work, and the answer to many of them will be, well, we don't know, and we're going to see. But we do have some ideas about how it's supposed to work. How did we get here? Well, for those of you, and I know there are a few people on this call, and I saw Bill Davis on here, I've been involved in these struggles for a long time. The Common Causes and League of Women Voters of the world have been trying for years to reform redistricting in Ohio. And I was part of their efforts back in 2005 and 2012 to come up with really comprehensive reforms for the state of Ohio. And we put them on the ballot, and we got our rear ends handed to us by the voters, because it's a tough sell if you have opposition that's well funded. But coming out of the 2012 one, there was some momentum. I think people at the State House figured that at some point these good government types were going to get it right and win, and so maybe they should try to get out ahead of this. And so the State House got busy, and there were some negotiated efforts, and in 2015 came up with a change to the way we do the state house districts. That went to the ballot and was passed by over 70% in every county. And then they had promised that they were going to get around to doing congressional reforms, and it wasn't coming, it wasn't coming, it wasn't coming. And the good government types got together again and began to collect signatures to go back to the ballot. And around about that time, the state house people came back to the table and said, okay, we'll do something. There were negotiations between the RSMPs, the League of Women Voters, and those folks had some input. And we got another negotiated thing in 2018 for congressional reform. Okay, so before we look at the rules and before we look at the timelines and the census and all that stuff, it's essential. This stuff only makes sense if you keep two things in mind. One is that the congressional and the state house processes are different processes. Okay, and both of them were negotiated at separate times. And so they're different. And because they're negotiated, they're like some kind of animal that doesn't exist in the wild. I mean, it's a little exotic. Okay. So let's take a look at what we've got here. So first, we'll talk a little bit about the rules that we've got for the Ohio House and Senate. I'm of the opinion that the critical thing here is not the substantive rules that apply, but who is actually going to make the decisions and draw the maps. I think that's probably the more important thing, both for the Ohio district situation as well as for the congressional district situation, but you can be the judge of this yourself. So here are the basic rules that we're going to be dealing with in the greats for drawing Ohio House and Senate rules. They're going to have to be compact and contiguous. They're going to have to minimize unnecessary splitting of counties, cities, townships. The rules for that go on and on for pages, how you minimize the splitting. There are public hearings required. For the state rules, I believe there are going to be 3 public hearings, meaning around the state. And then each Senate district must consist of 3 contiguous House districts. That's been the rule for a very long time. So 3 House districts fit in each Senate district. No plan shall be drawn to primarily favor or disfavor a political party. That's an important criteria if you think about it. But it's also one that can be a little slippery. You see the word primarily in there, right? And then there's something called representational fairness. The statewide proportion of districts whose voters, based on statewide general election results during the last 10 years, favor each political party should correspond to the statewide preferences of the voters for Ohio. Meaning this, we saw earlier that in the state house races in the last 10 years, it's been about a 55-45 split. What that means is that the districts, as they are drawn, should be drawn to yield something like that, rather than the disproportionately the 64-36 thing we got right now. It should end up being more like 55-45. So that's the goal. Okay, so those are the rules for House and Senate. Not too bad. It's something. And then here's who's actually going to be making the decision. Who's going to draw these maps? It's a 7-person committee. And you see the 3 statewide office holders at the top. And then you see the leader of the Ohio House, and then the minority leader of the Ohio House. And you see the leader of the appointee by the Senate president, and then the minority leader, appointed by the minority leader. So what that means is that out of this 7-person body, you have to have at least 2 people from the minority party, the biggest minority party, if you will, on this 7-person body. Okay, they're the ones that are going to draw the maps. And how do they do it? Here's the process. There's a 10-year map, and that's always been the goal. That's the way it's always been done in the past. You do this every 10 years. The map lasts for 10 years. You get a 10-year map if 2 people from each party among these 7 sign on to your map. Okay? Meaning both of the, in this instance, Democrats would have to sign on to get a 10-year map. All right. But what if they don't? Well, you can still pass a map with just a simple majority, but it's only going to go into effect for 4 years. Okay. So 2 congressional cycles, 4 years later, we're doing this again. It's a strange mechanism if you think of it, right? But that's the mechanism we got. Again, I warned you, it only makes sense if you think of this as some kind of negotiation where people are figuring out, well, but what do you do if you don't, right? And that's what they came up with. Having a 4-year map would be, I think, generally viewed as a failure because it's always been 10. And so I think that creates some pressure on everybody to get together and come up with something that you can get the 2 minority representatives to sign on. Okay. So that's the way the State House is going to work. All right. Now, let's talk about how we're going to deal with the congressional maps. Remember, separate process, negotiated at a separate time. It's a different mechanism. It's a whole different beast here. All right. So the rules are, a couple of these will look familiar. Compact and contiguous, number 1. Minimize unnecessary splitting of counties, cities, and townships. You've seen those before. Public hearings, you've seen that before. And then something called stage 4 additional standards. And this is where it gets interesting. Okay, I hope you have a sense of humor because I'm going to show you a little chart that shows the process for drawing congressional maps. And you'll see when we get to stage 4, and you can see when the additional standards kick in. Ta-da! All right, there you go. Stage 1 on the left. The General Assembly, meaning both houses of the State House, the House and the Senate, the State House and the State Senate, can pass a 10-year map if 60% of all members vote for it and at least half of the largest minority party votes for it. So in this instance, half of the Democrats would have to vote for it in order to get a 10-year map in stage 1. Okay, if that doesn't happen, then it goes to stage 2. Remember that commission that we saw that is going to be drawing the State House maps? They're back in action. They get to play here. They can pass a 10-year plan if 4 of the 7 members, including the 2 minority members, vote for it. Okay, it's kind of a familiar mechanism. So you can have a 10-year map if that commission, using the same sort of math, signs on to it. But if that doesn't happen, you can get another 10-year map. It goes back to the General Assembly. And 60% of all members and only a third of Democrats. If they vote for it, you get a 10-year map. If you don't get that, now you're on to the 4-year map thing. We're in stage 4, okay? Stage 4, you get a 4-year map, all right? But there are these additional standards. Under stage 4, you get this standard of must not unduly favor or disfavor a party or incumbent, okay, which you kind of saw earlier in the state stuff. But that only kicks in stage 4. And also there's a more rigorous don't split up the counties and cities requirement that gets more rigorous under stage 4. And so that's supposed to be the incentive, if you will, to avoid the 4-year map because it's a little more rigorous and get it done under stage 1, 2, or 3. But, what can you say, right? Pretty crazy. Rube Goldberg would have been proud, but that's what we got. Then after he gets through, whenever it gets through one of these stages successfully, it goes to the governor. He can sign it or he can veto it. Or the people can take out petitions to veto, as I think we tried before in the state of Ohio a while ago. That's difficult. I think nowadays you only get about 90 days to do that. You got to get a ton of signatures, and it made it harder to do it in the last 10 years. And of course, if the result really stinks, somebody can take it to court. Somebody probably will take it to court. These sort of cases go first to the Ohio Supreme Court, and the federal constitution issues heard in federal court. But the basic issues about whether they complied with the state constitution changes, this particular mechanism we've been discussed, are going to be heard by the Ohio Supreme Court. All right, so there it is. That's the new game in town. And all of this was supposed to have kicked off, oh gosh, back in March. Because back in March was when we were supposed to have all the census numbers. We didn't. I think in April, we got the basic numbers for apportionment. And that's when we found out, I think it was April, we found out that we were going to have 15 seats rather than 60. But the census level data that are needed to actually draw maps will not be available till August instead of March. August 16th is the date. I understand it will be available. And even then, it's going to be available in what they call legacy format, which is not that, it's a format that's harder to work with. And so the Ohio University is going to be working with that. But my understanding, it will take them a couple of weeks after they get that data, turn it into something that people can actually work with and draw maps from. So while the good government folks, the people in fair districts, we're going to try to create a whole process over the summer, working with that data, having a mapping a competition, etc. It's harder to do, but that doesn't mean we're not going to try to do it. So we're going to take action. Hang on a second. Let me where's the slide with the darn? Okay, sorry about that. I thought I had some timeline in the Ohio Constitution. I'm not seeing that. Go back. No. Okay. The timeline is that the state stuff is supposed to be done by September 15th. You can see just how difficult that would be by September 15th. And the federal stuff, it's September 30th for stage 1, October 30th for stage 2, November 30th for stage 3 or 4. So maybe there's more time to work some magic there. There are supposed to be hearings, like I said, for the state maps. There have to be at least 3 hearings across the state where they present maps and seek input. For the federal maps, there have to be 2 public committee hearings and 2 public hearings for the public to participate. They have to allow the public to submit plans. And so the limits on getting this done are that we have to have maps in time for the May primary. And I understand that for the state house seats, at least, lawmakers need to live in a district 1 year before the election. And so there's some urgency there, I guess. So how do we make the most of the time we have, which is not the time we wanted to have? The Redistricting Commission, in order to start its work, needs to be convened by the governor. So the very first item here is to tell Governor Wine to convene that thing, because it can't start working. It can't start having meetings. It can't start announcing, how it's going to accept public input or scheduling hearings or anything like that until it's convened. And by the Constitution, Ohio's Constitution, it is DeWine that has the power to do that. And so there's a letter writing campaign to DeWine urging him to step up and do that. So DeWine convenes the Redistricting Commission. The Redistricting Commission is the primary group that's going to redraw the state house maps. The legislators are the primary group that are going to redraw the federal maps, the congressional maps. And so they too need to get busy. They need to get it to a committee. They need to start scheduling hearings, and there are things that they can be doing even without having the legacy data. And so the other thing is to write the legislature, tell them to get it going here, and writing letters to the editor, etc. A lot of this is about trying to begin to create in the public consciousness awareness, number one, that this is happening, and number two, that we need fair districts, that there are in fact things that can be done that will get us fairer districts than we have had. So here are some of the tools we got available. On the left, you see these nice little postcards, which you can order. We're going to make sure you get a set of all these slides so that you can click on things that you want to click on and sign up for stuff. They also have some nice yard signs. I have one of these in my yard. Maybe some of you do too already. But again, this is about trying to create some public consciousness and some public pressure about this whole process. And of course, fair districts can use money, so you should feel free to donate, spread the word. Speakers Bureau, if you want to do what I'm doing, it's not that hard. Sign up, be a presenter. They have some slides. I edited the slides that I'm showing you today, but you can find a set that you would like working with. And community making. This is something I spoke to one of the leaders of this morning. This is something she wanted me to really stress today. The idea of community map making is to take available data. I mean, you can get some halfway decent data about who lives where and in what numbers, and begin the process of people in a community saying, we're a community of interest, and here's how we define ourselves, and have a conversation with a group of people to try to figure out what is the area that we think to be fair to the people that live there. You need to kind of include in a legislative district, whether for the state house or for Congress or for whatever. It has really two functions. One is it begins to create some building blocks that we can try to then plug into the community input that will be allowed when the formal process gets started. And it also is a way of getting people thinking about map drawing and all that kind of stuff. And so this Fair District has a facilitator. They have access to some mapping software, and they'd love to help you do that with wherever it is you live. We think there will be a map making competition starting in late summer, and you may want to participate in that. We did that back in, I guess in 2010, back the last time they drew the maps. I was involved in this, and there were, a bunch of people from around the state drew maps based upon the available census data, most of which were far more representative of the citizens than the maps we ended up. The message was, it's not that hard to draw reasonably fair maps. It's really hard to draw the kind of maps that they drew for us last time around, and that we hope we won't get stuck with this time around. Let's see what else we got here on these slides. There's all the stuff about how to be in touch with these wonderful folks. And I will stop sharing at this point. And I am really glad to take questions. The last time I did this presentation, people kind of shook their heads. And like, oh my gosh, that's a lot to digest. And so I accept the fact that it's a lot to digest. So please ask any questions. I don't mind repeating something, whatever. I want you to understand this, and I want you to understand, start seeing for yourself how you can get engaged over the next couple of minutes. And I don't know how we're going to do the question. I'll leave that up to Doug.
Well, Doug, I've allowed people to unmute themselves.
That's great. Yeah, let's do it that way. Thanks.
Anything in the chat window yet?
Nope, we didn't have any questions in the chat yet.
Hi there, my name is Dylan. I had a quick question. On your slide about the flow chart with the process and the dates and everything, there was kind of like a arrow at the bottom that sidestepped the governor from stage 2. I was wondering about that.
No, the governor, one way or another, the governor's going to have to sign. Okay. Yeah, that is weird. That's a good catch there, Dylan. Thank you. The governor's got to sign it. Although I'm going to check that out.
I have a question.
I'm wondering why they drew it that way. My understanding is the governor's got to sign every one of them, and if I find out otherwise, I'll get back to you. Okay?
Great, thanks.
Question, is your definition of fair maps districts that have such that the outcome is proportional to the number of voters in the state? I would think that fairer maps would include districts that were up for grabs.
Good point, Randy. I think there are a lot of ways to define it. You could say, You could say it's representative of the, the voters in the state. You could say that, it increases the number of districts that are actually disputed. You could say that it keeps communities of interest together. You could say there are a lot of different ways to look at it. And that's one of the reasons this becomes so hotly disputed over time. You got to kind of balance all these various things, so I don't think this particular, the congressional changes we got as a result of this negotiated process do a perfect job of balancing all of the criteria you'd like to see. Far from it, but you can see some of them begin to emerge in what we've got.
The time frame seems extremely compressed. Do you think a decent job can be done in that sort of time frame?
I'm going to say yes, because we need to give it a shot, right? It's obviously much more difficult than had we been able to get this process started back in the spring with the real numbers in front of us. And so, we're making lemonade. What can I say? That's what we got to do here is, given the time frame that we've got, it's going to be very compressed. There's going to have to be a, kind of an all hands on deck effort here to get some better results. We do have a tool to use. We have some rules. We've got a process that does require or certainly incentivizes bipartisan buy-in, right? In both arenas, the state arena and the federal arena, and incentivizes it. And so, we got to give it a shot.
I think
Ellis, oops, sorry.
I thought I'd add something if I could. One thing that I think that is going to make districts more fair, at least from the standpoint of the voters, is that you won't have any situations where a county is split unnecessarily. One example was Mercer County, which was split into 3 different districts. And during the period of signature collection on petitions, it was very easy work to get people up in Mercer County to sign that petition, because they were really feeling unrepresented. And so, if we can just end the practice of splitting up counties and doing what they did, like I forget which district now it was, but in the Cincinnati area where they peeled off Democratic voters in the city and put them together with conservative voters in Warren County. That's just dirty pool. So I think that we have a great deal of potential of making the districts more competitive. They won't have, one party won't have 3/4 of the districts when they don't have 3/4 of the voters. Okay, does that help answer a question anybody had?
And Bill's point is a good one. I think a lot of people that study this feel that limiting the ability to divide up jurisdictions will have a positive effect. For congressional districts, there's also a limit on the ability to divide cities. If a city is between 100,000 and 760,000 people, you can't divide the city between 2 congressional districts or 3 congressional districts anymore. And so that covers a lot of cities. Columbus is larger, and so Columbus will be, divided. But Dayton and, I don't think Cincinnati is, I don't know. So some of those kind of rules will sort of lay a groundwork for fair outcomes.
Ellis, kind of along those lines, Pat had a question in the chat. It's asking, why not just divide the state up based on population and being contiguous and not worry so much about how people vote by party?
Well, Pat, like I said, there are millions of ways of doing it. I'm not here to argue for any particular way of doing it. I'm just telling you how we're doing it this time around. You know, I mean, it's a great argument about what's the best way to do it. It almost becomes a philosophical argument, something if you think about it, if you really get into it. But these are the new rules. We're doing it this time. Maybe in 10 years down the road, we'll have a new set of new rules, but these are the rules we got. And so the question is, how do you get the fairest outcome given these rules? And in my mind, for sure, the way you help get a fair outcome is by making sure people know this is going on and making sure they know that there are ways to do it so you get really unfair maps, and there are ways to do it where you get less unfair maps. How's that? I'm avoiding saying fair. And so that they can get involved and have a say, and let their legislators know, and let the people in this district know what they think. And that's part of this whole thing about having this conversation about creating these communities of interest and trying to do some community mapping. It's about creating a conversation with your neighbors or with other people in the community about how do we want to see, how do we want to be represented.
Another question in the chat, Marilyn's asking, is there software people can use to draw maps?
There is. And yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to roll out, Marilyn. Right now, if you get in touch with the person that is doing the community mapping, I think he has access to some software they're using for that. And I don't think that's necessarily the same software that will be used in the competition that will take place later in the summer. But in the past, yeah, we had a software package. I understand that there are some folks at Princeton right now that are running a national competition in a variety of states where you can access some software and start playing around with some numbers. But again, you will be using unofficial numbers. And so, it's hard to, but they'll be close, right? So you could probably, have some good ideas about how you could draw stuff up.
Okay, if there are no more questions, we'll move to close.
So
Anybody
Doug, let me
else?
just ask you something. Can we make sure people get a set of the slides, or I do want them to have access to all the, although I saw Bill Davis put the fairdistrictsohio.org website there. I think if you go there, you can find everything, all of the contact information that was included in my later slides, but I do want to make sure you have that. And so if it's all right, we could send this stuff to you tomorrow.
Yeah,
If you send it to me, we'll get it posted on our website.
Okay, great. Thanks.
You're welcome. All right, any other questions? If not, thank you very much, Alice. It's been a very informative presentation. Hopefully it's motivated some of us to get out there and get involved. And,
It's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it. I do hope you will get involved. It's like, we have a chance here to improve the results.
Yeah.
And, might as well take it.
Great. Thanks so much.
Sure, Marilyn. Nice seeing you.
Okay. With that, I guess I'll close the meeting then. Thanks again.